Hey, everybody. It is time for another episode of Explain Yourself, where we talk to some great indie comics creators about their books. Tonight, we're going to be looking at a cool project from Brayden and Viloria called Haven. It's a superhero noir, and I'm excited to dig into it. So, Brayden, how you doing?
Hi, doing well yourself?
Doing great. Doing great. Thanks for coming on the show.
Thank you. My name is Brayden Viloria, and I'm the creator of Haven Comics. Haven is a detective noir story wrapped up in like a brutal superhero setting. It is kind of like X-Men, like the civil unrest of X-Men meets Superman set in Gotham City. Pretty much is kind of my sales pitch here. It follows Haven, an upstart hero, after his fight with Inferno. Um, apartment apartment complex gets burned down, leaving 5 dead. One of them being the Humans for Humanity leader, Jeremy Whitaker. Protesters are descending the streets to Rook City PD, and yeah, that's kind of where things kick off.
Cool. Sounds awesome. So, the link for this is in the description if you're watching this on YouTube, or you can go to Kickstarter and look up Haven. We're pre-recording this, but as of now, it has 4 days to go. I think when you guys are watching this, it'll be in its last 2 days. So be sure to head over there and back this great story. It's met its goal, so you're going to get the book. It's going to get produced. And so we're just hoping to get as many eyes on this book as possible. So Brayden, I'm sorry. What really stuck out to me here was your art's really cool. Your artist did a great job. I think it has kind of a Big Two feel, but with a little bit of an indie edge to it. It's a little more painterly. Tell us a little bit about how your artist and you work together to create this book.
Yeah. So the artist is Leonardo Uden. He's an artist from Argentina. He's 19 years old.
Oh my God!
Yeah, pretty.
I take
pretty
every nice thing I said. This is terrible. You should be that good this early,
right? Yeah. Who can be that good? Yeah. He's self-taught, and and I found him kind of as I was searching through. He actually wasn't the first artist on the project. The first artist got picked up by an editor, and so the search began again. But yeah, Leonardo Uden, I found him on Reddit, and we just kind of talked back and forth. I saw some of his portfolio. He had some images up. A lot of it was noir themed, like even he had like a Spider-Man piece, kind of that absolute Batman piece, and it was very like noir. The colors drew me right away to kind of what he was doing, right? And funny enough, he says he's not like super into coloring. Like he's not like that's not his forte. I'm like, I don't know what you're talking about. You're crazy. But yeah, and found him and we started working together. And it's been great. It's his first comic project. It's my first comic project. So learning together as we go, but it's really, really proud of what we have here.
No, you should be. It's great stuff. I'm really surprised to hear, obviously, his age, that's just totally unacceptable to be that good that early.
Yeah.
But also that he's not as into the color, because I think this is not just competent coloring, which you don't always see in indie books, but I'd say very pretty mature color palette in a lot of ways. I mean, he's not going for the flashiest things you see with sometimes people that are starting out. You get stuff that's kind of Image or Alex Sinclair light. So a lot of effects, super bright colors, and that's not always bad, but it's not the best fit for a lot of stories. And I think this does remind me a lot of Absolute Batman in terms of the subtlety, especially with the color palette. So I'm doubly surprised to hear that's not his real forte. Although it's not surprising given that the line art is really excellent.
Yeah, no, for sure. And yeah, the way he does colors and like his blacks and everything too is just, it's really brought the project to life. Like, as a first time writer, you kind of, as you're getting the script out and working with the artist, you don't really know what things are going to look like when you get pen to page. But suffice to say that I'm quite happy with what we were able to do for sure.
Well, I think you ought to be. It's this turned out really good, and like I said, it's a very mature book. It kind of reminds you of the books that are Big Two that are superheroes, but with a little bit of a twist, which it kind of sounds like what you're doing. You're not. This isn't just a straight up, well, here's my substitute for Robin or Nightwing or whoever.
Yeah,
sort of thing. You're mixing and matching elements of that stuff, which is great. You mentioned it's kind of like Gotham City, so I take that to mean it's a little bit of a more downtrodden sort of crime-ridden city.
Yeah.
And then you're taking elements of different characters in there, not just the characters themselves, but kind of their elements of their world and things that contribute to their plot arcs. So tell us a little bit about how you kind of mash that together, how you decided to do that.
Yeah, for sure. So I've loved superheroes since I was a kid, and what really struck me with superheroes is like all of them have a no kill rule, right? They don't kill. Most of them do, and to me, like it always seemed like super virtuous, right? Like I'm not going to kill, and I'm the epitome of good. And I thought, well, sure, you have a no kill rule, you're not killing, but like how many people are getting hurt while you're holding back? You know what I mean? During the fight, not pulling your punches. It sounds nice, right? But when an apartment complex gets burned down, when people get injured, people get put in the line of fire. How good is that no kill rule, or even holding back, right? Pulling your punches. How good is that in practice? And so that's kind of the setup for this fight, and kind of the setup for the book is it really explores the consequences of that. Of Inferno's alive. You didn't kill him. You ended the fight, but what else happened in the midst of everything? And and as you see here, a lot, a lot happens, and people get hurt. And I really wanted to explore those kind of darker themes of like, if superheroes were real, right? Like if mutations just kind of happened and we use mutations, I always say I wish I could use mutant as like a phrase, because it's so nice of a phrase, but we use enhanced because X-Men would sue me. And so if these enhanced start popping up, like how does society react to this, right? How does the city at large, when apartment complexes are getting burned down or cars are getting destroyed, right? And that's exactly what we explore in this first issue.
I think that is kind of interesting to dig into, because it's it's obviously played a huge role in Batman, kind of for and against. And I think some creators, I'm sure, have you go to this sort of your Greek choir, Frank Miller talking heads sort of concepts, and you can show I'm sure I've seen some comics where people are like, why the hell is Batman killing these guys? I don't want to have to worry about the Joker my whole life. And yet I think there is enough in the real world complexity to that issue that it would make sense to kind of make an argument for it. I remember when I was younger, they passed a law in America here that if I think 3 major crimes, you went to jail for the rest of your life. And while that sounds great, if you're like a Law and Order type, a lot of policemen found in a year or two later, it said, hey, this is a bad idea, because there's guys that will have their third arrest. We say, hey, surrender. And they, what do they have to lose? They go out guns a-blazing. So it's kind of an unintended consequence, they think, because of things like that. You can really examine that rule and say, yes, it leaves these guys' lives to do harm, but you could also be creating an environment where things get so much more extreme or something like that. Not that that's, I don't know where your book goes with the question, but I only kind of say that to say, yeah, there is a lot to be dug into there, without just it being, we're Batman zigs, we zag, and we see what happens.
Yeah, no, for sure, absolutely. And what's really nice is it's funny they brought up police. Yeah, a lot of this book too is exploring, like this right here, our second main character, Detective Brayden. How does the normal person, the normal detective, as it were, what do they think of all this, right? Like they now have, right, like the hero in cuffs, right? They have the villain in a jail cell, and they have to kind of deal with all the aftermath, right? They have to deal with everything else that happened after the fight. And this is kind of what we see here. And if you scroll down just a little bit, it kind of goes into the police precinct of everything. A little bit before Detective Brayden was like, did you hold back? Right. Kind of playing on that of, people got hurt, and all of this is kind of the consequences of it. And I wanted to have 2 main characters that had the same goal, right? Obviously The detective wants to keep Brook City safe. Haven wants to keep Brook City safe. But I wanted them to be oh, geez Louise. I wanted them to be opposed in their ideals. Yeah, I wanted them to be opposed. I wanted the detective to have a more jaded outlook, right? Because he doesn't have powers, and he's kind of the stand-in for the people, for the audience a little bit of, yeah, I don't have powers. I can't make those choices literally that you can make, right? When it comes down to the fights, when it comes down to dealing with Inferno, I'm robbed of that, right? I don't get that luxury that you do. And really testing Haven's resolve in terms of how he approaches these situations.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's a great conflict to have with your two main characters being a little bit at odds on maybe some not minor issues, but not the main issue, which is just stop the bad guy, I assume.
Yeah, for sure.
What I really stuck out to me about, I was looking at this preview earlier in the week. This almost reads like, I mean, I know it's your first issue, but it reads in a way that almost makes me think there were previous issues. And I mean that as a good thing. And that it doesn't just feel like your standard first issue where it's really piloty. It's like, hello, Chief so-and-so. How's that?
Sure.
Insert, previous plot point thing. It's just a little bit too much of the, hey, we're really establishing it. This feels like I'm hitting the ground running in I think a fun way. Just the way he's interacting with the police, even the way he's kind of talking to himself when he's in this office looking around. It just feels like I'm hitting the ground running in a way that's not like, wait a second, why does he? It doesn't. I think it's spoon feeding us the right amount of information.
Yes, yeah, that's exactly it. And that was really, really intentional. I hate big blocks of like exposition dumps and everything else. And I was like, if I make a story, I want to stay away from that. I want to avoid it, like the plague. And so I was like, okay, how do I do this? And so yeah, in terms of writing, and it fits into the noir element too, right? I wanted to put the reader in a world where it was already established. These things were already going on. You're kind of dropped in the middle a bit, but I wanted to drip feed you information. Yeah, like you said, just enough information so you know what's going on. You get maybe a little bit more context of things that have happened or could happen, and kind of how the city reacts as a whole right now. Yeah, and then I wanted to kind of just set you loose on this one scenario, and then as issues move on, that element will expand, and it will kind of play around with the exposition and with the lore. But yeah, really happy with kind of the information and how that came up.
Yeah, that's such a huge challenge, I think, in a first issue, especially just to say, I mean, there's such a dual challenge there, especially with a new book that's also an indie book, and is you're introducing your universe, you're introducing your voice as a writer, you're introducing your artists, you're introducing the characters, what the plot's going to be, and somehow it also has to be fun. It's a really tough challenge, and I think it's also hard. The last creator I talked to had, and I've done this as well, where I've been developing a world for like a long time, and when I finally get a new set of conditions, like I had to condense my story into 4 issues from like 12 and 7, and he had kind of a similar thing. It was very hard to just remember what the reader would know, and what you have all this information in your head from thinking about it forever, and then you've got to figure out how to get the right amount of that onto the page without setting up something that that the reader wouldn't. So I'm going to ask, how long were you developing this world? You said you were kind of starting out the same as your artist was. Is this something you came up with the idea like last year and just started refining it, or has this been something you've been kind of stewing for a long time?
Yeah, so I started coming up with this idea probably a year and a bit ago, probably about like 13 months ago. Yeah, just kind of had an idea for this story, and kind of playing around with it. And then my uncle had passed away from cancer.
I'm sorry to hear that.
Yeah, no, thank you. And I wanted to, so the detective is modeled after my uncle. I had this story in my head, and I wanted to have a way where I could kind of put him in the story, kind of have him be central, and to kind of honor, his memory in a way. And so I really started like heavily focusing on this probably a year back, and just kind of workshopping it. The way I approach like world building and stuff like that is I will have like a loose outline, and this may shift as I kind of gain more experience and stuff. But how I do it now is I kind of have like a loose outline of the world. Right now, I'm just focusing on Rook City, but of how like the city operates, kind of the factions at play, and kind of like different elements that I want to touch on, and then I can start fleshing it out. But I always keep it pretty loose, I would say. I found in the process of making it, especially with Leonardo and the artist and stuff, that he like I would send him a script and he might have a different take. He would send me kind of his take on it, and we would kind of like workshop it together. So I keep the details strong enough to have a good foundation, but loose enough to where I can change, minor things here or there, and still be able to, keep going with something coherent and cool.
No, it definitely from the preview really looks like, I think that comes through. I mean, it has a freshness to it. It doesn't seem belabored. And I had another comic that came to me a lot more quickly than the one I alluded to earlier. And it was like so much easier to just having about a year to develop it, be like, okay, I established this because I'm figuring it out at the same time. And it makes it so much easier, I think, to construct. And I guess I'm a writer artist, so I don't really have anyone else to bounce things off of, but I think it's really important to do what you've done. And, when you found a good partner, like you have with your artist who, man, this kid's really going places, to work with them and kind of find the best way to do that. So really, I mean, just beautiful stuff. And I think even the lettering and I guess the design of the book looks really professional, really fantastic. So it's a real accomplishment, I think, right out of the gate. Believe it's your first book, right?
Yeah, this is my first book. So this one kind of sets up the Rook City universe. And I do have a second book that is in production right now, called Sketch Night, which expands on the Rook City universe. So these two books I'm going to be doing are going to be set in the same city, in a similar timeline, and kind of play off each other. But first book in the series.
Very cool. That's something actually the creator I was talking to last week had a really good way of doing it as well. I mean, he had a universe that was really based around his city.
Yeah.
And he had this huge epic kind of written out in different formats. And then as he decided which comic to do, some were prequels, some were further on in the timeline, but it was a good way to, I think, as an indie comics person, you're not going to be putting out 3 books a month that are in the same universe and build the crossovers. And, just the output's not going to be that fast. Mm-hmm. It was a really good way to build a world that people would want to be invested in and come back to, but not necessarily. I think it's a format and a way of doing things that's really fine-tuned to Kickstarter creators doing indie comics. You can have the right amount of, like, I guess, revisiting the story and continuing it without it also feeling like, wow, it's like a monthly comic from the big 2, but it takes 3 years to read 3 issues or something like that.
Yeah, no, for sure. Well, and absolutely, right? Like, those are always going to be, especially for indie creators. And I'm like newer to the space, but as I found, definitely those are struggles and things to get over. But trying to just have an output that's fast enough to keep people's attention and get going. And
no, I think it definitely does that. And you've got some great artwork here, some great covers, really cool stuff to see. I really like this one. Really cool sense of design here. You almost think it was a cyberpunk comic from this one, but really cool to see. Oh, go ahead.
That one specifically was a riff off a Batman versus Superman poster.
Okay.
Yeah, they did there. And then I was just like, throw on some neon. Let's get it, and then we'll like shade out the characters. But that was super fun to play around with.
Yeah, cool. So you've mentioned Batman a few times and kind of the no-kill convention. and then some of the stuff you brought in from X-Men a little bit, or even you haven't mentioned this, but kind of the real world reaction stuff you'd see in Watchmen, or some of the more deconstructionist superhero takes we've seen over the years. One thing this really stuck out to me when I was looking at your preview pages is just how it kind of takes me back to the early 2000s, where you had shows like Heroes and stuff, where it was superhero world, but they didn't really want to go whole hog. The Marvel movies weren't big yet. They weren't going to just throw people out there in tights or superhero uniforms. They were dialing it back in a way that was disappointing at the time. But I look back on that stuff and I'm like, yeah, I really liked those movies. It was fun. Just there's a little nostalgia there. But it also, I think, it seemed at the time like a way to not alienate audiences that think Superman looks silly, but also, it kind of seemed like a way to scale it to TV budgets and movie budgets at the time. Was any of that stuff on your mind when you were putting this together? Shows like Heroes, or there was, I think, even one called The Cape that was a little dialed back, or I'd say even early Arrowverse was just very down to earth, showed superhero things, but didn't necessarily get into a lot of the iconography of superheroes.
I'm a huge like Arrow fan, Heroes, like back in the day, right? Watching it as a kid. And there definitely is a nostalgia factor in a lot of what I have here. I wanted to do it where, and you'll kind of see in the issue, there's like Easter eggs to like cool stuff like Teen Titans. I don't know if you ever watched it back in the early 2000s. There's like nods to that, and like Heroes and stuff like that. And I wanted to kind of craft a world where not that it is going to get picked up or anything like that, but if a TV exec is looking at it and they're like, we need millions of dollars of budget to make this, I'm like, well, no. Kind of showing my hand there, but and also too, and you'll kind of see later on in the issue, but like, not really costumes. Not to say that costumes aren't a thing in this universe, but I wanted, when I do present a costume out in these comics, I wanted to have function instead of just form. So something that might channel an ability, right, or result in the activation of an ability, something like that, where it has real kind of purpose to it. And so I wanted, the first time that someone sees that in this present timeline, that now back in the day, in terms of like the lore, we might see things where when enhanced were first popping up, people might have been jumping into tights, a little quicker because of the hype and the hoopla. But as it stands in the present, more. And I also wanted it to be this thing where, because we are doing a riff on X-Men, we are doing like this mutant thing, right? People get these mutations. I wanted there to almost be a sense of like randomness of anyone, right? Like your neighbor could be enhanced, right? And almost have this like to breed the conspiracy and kind of the fear, of the city, right? That these people walk among us now.
Yeah, I mean, it's weird at the time. I mean, some of the early superhero stuff from the 2000s it seemed dialed down to me, or just like, oh, our version of Deathlock is going to be a normal guy with like just a little thing on his eye or something like that. And I hated it at the time. And yet now I look at this, the first thing I thought was like, oh, wow, there's things about that I miss. I like the nostalgia of that. And it's, I think, also kind of clues you into your approach a little bit, which is you're going to step back and kind of examine some of these things with a good mix of real world stuff and then comic book iconography, but it's going to make a little bit more sense and be thought out in that way, which is a lot of fun to do. I think that's what makes it not just a character fun or a book fun, but a universe fun to explore.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And it really was this thing of, because I feel like a lot of times you see when people try and take the more grounded route, it kind of sucks.
Don't mince words.
It kind of sucks the fun of the superhero stuff, right? Where you might see powers that are like more held back, right, than they normally would be, or kind of like dull, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
They dull the sword a bit when they do that. And so I wanted to strike a balance. And as you'll see in this first issue, if you get it, guys, as you see in this first issue, that we do take a grounded take, but when the powers are flying and when the abilities are going, we make it, you know, just as kind of bombastic. We don't forget the fun of it and kind of the spectacle, but we make that spectacle have you know, real weight and consequence behind it.
No, I think that's the real thing to do. I mean, any approach is good and can have impact and fun and drama to it. It just kind of has to be what I think I hated about those shows and things at the time, and especially comics that would then imitate them, which was I wasn't writing my own stuff then, but I was always getting writers contact me, usually for not an upfront page rates, like, hey, it's like Heroes, but this, or a lot of actors were kind of trying to get into that game, and it felt like I had a bad attitude about it because of that. But, you know, looking at having some distance between that sort of being the fad or the style, you see the things that are good about it. And I think the important thing is just calibrating it to get the right amount of drama, the right interesting things to look at. Before we move on to kind of what you're doing, like on marketing and how you made your Kickstarter and things like that, just tell us how long the book is. And is this issue 1? I know you mentioned another story, but is this issue 1 of 2 or 4? And how many pages is each one going to be?
Yeah. So this current book is 24 pages. We have 20 pages of interior art and 4 for our like covers, inside cover, outside cover. Yeah. So that'll be kind of all our books. Will be that. And this will run for 8 issues is the timeline or what we're shooting for. Yeah. For that. And yeah, so we plan for it to kind of be a longer mini series, as it were, for the Haven book.
Cool. And then there's other stories in the Haven universe coming out after that.
Yeah, so my current plan right now is what I want to do is I want to have 4 issues of Haven, you know, as they come out, and 4 issues of Sketch Night is going to be the second series in the Rook City universe, and then each 4 issues, since that will be like kind of like a trade paperback. I want to do a crossover project between the two. That then carries on into the next 4 issues.
Very cool. All right, we'll take a quick break and play a message from a couple of our partners, and then I'll ask you some other questions about some of the behind-the-scenes stuff that go into making a comic.
Perfect.
Click that mouse and warp into All Ages of Geek's website, your ultimate portal to everything geek culture. Here you'll find articles that speak your language, from the latest anime buzz to the coolest tech trends. Our mission? To celebrate geekdom in all its glory. Whether you're a gamer, a comic enthusiast, a 90s kid, or an anime aficionado, we've got something for you. Dive deep into them with All Ages of Geek.
Your comics take a lot of time and effort to create. Way too much to have them get damaged while shipping to your backers. Gemini Comic Supply mailers keep your comics safe in transit, and with the code GeekCollective10, you can get those mailers with 10% off your order. That's Geek Collective 10. Enter it at checkout to get 10% off. Actually, just used that this week to get some more bags and boards and Gemini mailers and saved a decent amount of money. So definitely, if you're getting ready to fulfill, head over there and use that code. It's well worth it. But speaking of fulfilling campaigns and campaigns in general, this is your first one. You've done, I think, a great job of obviously putting your book together, which is what we were talking about before, but also, I think you've done a really good job of being a good, I would say, a new member of the community and reaching out for advice. I think I even saw someone say to you in our Indie Comics Discord that you're kind of I'm paraphrasing and probably misremembering, but this is kind of what we hope people will do when they come to start doing indie comics and want to reach out and be part of the community. Is like, hey, you're the best. This is what we hope people will do. They want to learn. They want to help other people out, be reciprocal, and that you've been a really good example of that. So obviously that's cool. And so tell us. Oh yeah. Well, I mean, I think that was someone else who said it. I mean, but I certainly agree. What were kind of your challenges? You're not only doing, it sounds like your first book and collaborating with an artist and doing, which is a huge hurdle in and of itself. Tell us about some of the challenges and things that surprised you about, okay, I've got this book. now we need to figure out how to make a campaign, market it, do all that stuff. How'd you go about that?
Yeah. So yeah, a lot of the challenges was kind of in the marketing of it. Setting up the Kickstarter. Before I kind of it was a lot of research on like comic Kickstarters. I kind of dived into what other people are doing, and being kind of indoctrinated into the community was really nice and helpful. And as you said, gained a lot of information and advice, and everyone's been super awesome on that front. But yeah, really just dive people's campaigns, see what they're doing, what works. I probably could fine tune some things for the next one, but a lot of the issues, not even really issues, but more hurdles and stuff was in kind of the marketing. I didn't know, this being my first project, kind of how that played out with Kickstarter and everything else. Do you just put it on and people, find it organically? Like, what is, how does that work? And I think I found pretty early on that it is a labor of love to make the comic, and it's a labor of love to put it out there and to market it, because it is another full-time job. I feel in terms of getting it out to different groups and just kind of it's one of those things where you pick people up slowly, and you get that first kind of initial burst, and then literally after that you are crawling to kind of get to where you need to be. And so that's one of the things that I just wasn't prepared for it, just because, it being my first project and everything. But, like you said, kind of being new to the comic book community and everything was super awesome. Like, a lot of the people were super helpful and insightful and everything there. And the cross promotion has been great. Like, with people just being like, yeah, no, absolutely, I can shout this out or do this. Like, it really is, when I first started wanting to make comics and everything, I was looking at like the Robert Kirkmans and everything and how to break into the comic book industry and all this. And all I was reading or listening to was it's super cutthroat. Like, as soon as someone makes their way in, they close that back up kind of thing. And I couldn't find that farther from the truth in terms of the indie comic book community. Like, everyone is, a helping hand, really, when it comes to it. And you really get a sense of community. When a project goes live, it feels like everyone is aware and ready for it. So yeah, that's been really nice.
That was my experience as well. I think I did my first, it was early 2021, and same process. I was seeing more and more. My wife had been after me for years previous to do something on Kickstarter or Indiegogo. And I was like, no, I want to have a real comic and real shops. And I was still kind of in love with that idea. And I finally had an idea that I thought was suited for this, because I finally did find a publisher and was ready to go to shops. And then COVID happened and it just all fell apart got delayed, and came up with another idea that I thought would be a good fit for Kickstarter, because I was just seeing so many products at the time that were just really good. It's like, oh, okay, people are doing cool stuff here. It's not just, sort of things I couldn't get going any other way, and made me excited for not just like, okay, I'll do a Kickstarter. I was like, hey, I'd rather be doing this. I want to do this. And I found the same thing you did. Everybody was just super happy to help. And I didn't experience I can't think of any negative interactions, really. Everybody was just like, hey, I have a question. I'd ask, like, hey, how do you guys do shipping? How do you do printing? Whatever little aspect, and people were just happy to jump in and help out. And I still find that to be the case now. I mean, even in our Discord, which we're both on an Indie Comics Discord with some other creators, I've had questions because I'm fulfilling my first campaign and was like, hey, do you guys do pirate ship? Is it really, am I looking at this right? And people are just right there with answers. So I think it's a great community to jump into, and it's a good time to be doing it.
Yeah, no, absolutely. It's one of those things that, like you said, I think the shipping was one of my first questions I asked. Was like, hey, like, how do people handle shipping? And they actually got me in contact with Lori Foster, who does
Okay, I've heard of her.
Yeah.
Daniel Calvin, I think, uses her, as mentioned her name.
Yeah, Sean Woods also uses
Okay.
her, or recommended me at least. Yeah, and she does fulfillment in the States, which was super cool because I'm Canadian. I'm the worst. But international.
I wasn't going to mention it, but it's okay.
I'll take the bullets out of the gun by shooting myself.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, international shipping was one of the things I was looking at, because that's another thing that I was super like unaware of. I was like, I'm shipping a comic book. It can't. How expensive can it be?
Oh my god! Yeah.
And to look at that number and kind of do a double take of like, oh wow. And so yeah, I got in contact with Lori Foster. If you're doing international projects, please contact her. But yeah, she set me right, and she's like, yeah, we can do it in the States. Which was super nice, because now, and I know we're going to get into rewards later, but now in terms of our shipping on our international products, right? Because a lot of our backers are from the States, we were able to get that price from like, I'm going to use Monopoly money now. We were able to get that price from like $30 Canadian to like about 12, which is I think $9 USD for you. For you guys.
Yeah, around there. Yeah, I got killed on my first campaign with international shipping because I kept my prices pretty low. I was trying to just build an audience and find my way, into this sphere a little bit for what kind of books people back, to just hopefully build a group of people that would keep backing my books. And, to that end, people would say, hey, I'm in Australia. Could you figure something out? And I just wanted to do it. So I'd say, yeah. And found even my worst case scenarios on shipping for Canada, for Germany, for England, for Australia. I think there were a few others. They were all vastly over, and I took a huge bath on those shipping. So I kind of stopped doing the international stuff after that. But yeah, if you're not careful, that can really sink you. So it sounds like you found a good workaround here, though, which is great.
Yeah, no, it's been really, really great, and yeah, super happy to be able to do that and get the kind of American audience, and hopefully with stuff we have in the works for future projects, that shipping point just gets lower and lower.
Yeah, we'll see. I keep thinking like things have got. I always thought that the shipping, especially Canada, because I actually have a backer who is.
We're not far.
You think like, yeah, I know it's crazy, and you think. It costs less for me to. I'm on the East Coast to send something to Hawaii. It's less than that, and I always thought, okay, this is a COVID-related hiccup. It's going to go down in a year, and it just never has. I think, if anything else, it's gotten worse.
Yeah, it's road for sure. Absolutely,
it's inexplicable. But while I know everyone loves to hear podcasts ranting about the post office, I know that's just the biggest audience out there, which is what we're aiming for. Let's shift gears and talk about your rewards. I see you have some digital stuff and a few other extra tiers that you can maybe star in the book a little bit as well. Tell us about those.
So right now on screen we have our digital PDF. So this gets you a digital copy of the book. And so that's pretty basic. It'll get you the 24 pages, and also it'll get you a your name in the thank you page for the digital version. Our digital deluxe PDF, so that comes with like behind the scenes things, some pencils, some inks, and even some like concept art for like what the project was in the very beginning. So just some cool kind of behind the scenes work of it all. And then we have our main covers here, as well as our variant covers. So you can get these now. What I'll probably be changing for future projects is I have all the covers the same price point, and so I thought when I was first making it, I was like, why make the covers different prices? It's the same book. But through talking with people, it's like, people want to, invest in kind of the cool variants that they're not going to get to see anywhere else. So, but we have these variants here, which is cool. And then we have the every cover bundle. So if you want to get all four, this one is actually priced. So it's priced as if it was 3 books. So you kind of get one free. when you do that, which is super, super cool. We have after that, our background character tier, which is all the stuff you heard before. Digital PDF, digital deluxe. You get all 4 covers, and you get to be in the book. You get to, so we get in contact with you. We get your likeness, and then we'll use it in future issues for our background characters, which is super cool. Underneath that, we have the Kill Me Off tier. This one is actually sold out, so you can't get it anymore. But we will have other versions of this for other campaigns, because I just think it's so fun. We're gonna kill you in the book, which is super cool. We have, I like to say, like an invincible style in terms of like violence and gore. So we don't really pull any punches when it comes to that. So we're gonna find fun ways to kill you. And you gotta tell your friends that you were killed in a comic book. So I mean, that's
I'm doing something like that for my next campaign, and it's not going to be in this campaign. I think I might do it for this one that I'm going to do in a month or two, but it's going to be basically Crisis on Infinite Earths meets 1940s comics. So there's going to be a lot of room for people in there, to do that and make the little cameo tiers. At the same time, I'm a little nervous about it because I'm good at a lot of things, but I suck at likenesses. So I'm kind of packaging it as, like you can design the costume a little bit with me.
nice.
Pick what happens to your guy. You can live, you can die. There's going to be a gazillion, people going each way.
For
sure. But I'm nervous about that. I planned on doing it for a while. I'm going to follow through with it, but I'm like, I hope I can get those likenesses right.
That's super fun. I can't even begin to think about what that is like as an artist. I'm happily behind the chair of a writer, and I'll spelt the words out and have the nice pretty pictures to look at what I've done. But I bet that takes a lot of forethought and design too. Hey,
it's even as I know great artists who I'm saying I am, but people who are just great at that stuff, most things, even tougher, backgrounds, placement, things like that. Likenesses are, I think, almost a completely different skill set. And you look at, especially if you look at sort of the Mad Magazine guys who are just almost effortlessly good at that. It's, man, anybody who can do that well, my hat's off to them. It's tough. One thing that I guess probably my last, line of questions is a little bit creative and kind of has some marketing aspects to it as well. You're doing a superhero book, not the most popular genre on Kickstarter. I'm doing the same thing. I read a quote, I think from, I don't know, I think it might have been one of the artists from Invincible. It might have been somebody else on Twitter a couple weeks ago, saying that while maybe comic shops and readers aren't necessarily supportive of new superhero universes, the success of Invincible on Amazon shows that audiences really are. And I think that's true. So it's cool to see somebody look at the landscape, do their research, and say, "No, I want to do this superhero book." And then I think also you've got a pretty unique take on it. So many things I see are kind of Bronze Age prestige. Mine's, in the same way, kind of a Golden Age thing. And you kind of went in a direction that's not as splashy, but just has its own approach, which I think is a really, it's a bold move. I really like that you did that. Is that something you kind of was a little bit of a non-negotiable for you? Like, hey, I really have a vision of the vibe of this universe, the way it's going to look at first appearance, and the issues it's going to explore. Or was that something you maybe had as background elements in your mind, and as you looked at other Kickstarters and what was doing well, kind of fine-tuned your thing either in opposition, to do something different, or did you tweak it kind of to be a little more or less like things you were seeing on Kickstarter currently?
No. So yeah, kind of like what you said. It was very much like, this is the art that I want to create. And this is kind of the kind of story I want to tell. And I really wanted to kind of put this in terms of, and we talk about the big two, and there are amazing books in terms of like mainstream comics and everything else. I won't deny that. But I don't know. It always felt kind of cookie cutter. You would have these runs that you would have these amazing runs, right? But then you would have runs after it that weren't as good, or that would mess things up, or that would be screwed up by an editor or something like that. Or you would have Paul's in Spider-Man, which we all collectively hate.
We don't talk. We don't talk about Paul. We don't do it at all.
That name is Voldemort. And
I'm really not even that into it, but I love the Spider-Man haters. They are the best group of comic haters, bar none.
For sure, absolutely. And and I was kind of like looking at this as a whole, and I was like, I want to create something that is different than this, right? And I was always drawn just in terms of like storytelling, not even comic books, but just storytelling of like character-driven stories and ideologies, and having those clash and everything else. And I wanted to ground it in a world where a lot of times kind of with these superhero settings and whatnot, it's so fantastical, right? That all the city stuff and all the people, right? It's Superman flying into space, right? It just gets lost. All that drama, all that character just gets lost. And I wanted to create something where the city, where the people were its own character. And yeah, so that was kind of my singular focus, and then over time just refining it and kind of throughout that year before we even put anything onto a page.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's not to criticize the big two too much, but I will until they hire me.
Yeah, until we get jobs.
Yeah, absolutely. Then I've got nothing but good things to say. But I mean, there's going to be, with a certain, especially some comics, I think there's kind of a thing built into the process where fans kind of want Batman to be doing, I guess what I would describe as like meat and potato Batman things, which is not necessarily like as cliche as he's got to be jumping in the alleyway to save somebody from muggers, but you do have an idea of what that should be, and it's fun to see it disrupted from time to time, where he goes to be Batman as R&R, or he fights Ra's al Ghul, which are kind of departures in genre, but we kind of want to see him in Gotham City solving crimes, fighting some of his rogues gallery. And I think I get the impression from reading interviews with writers and editors that it's like, well, to just come in and say, I just want to do like meat and potatoes Batman, would be like, well, that's not a pitch. And so we need to come up with this complicated other thing that sometimes it's really good, and sometimes it's just like, yeah, it's cool, but I don't want to see him fight this robot version of himself. It's just not like Batman to me. And I see why it happens, but I also see why it there's something kind of built in there where I think with the big two books, or just any character you're familiar with over a long period of time, where you kind of want the relationship there between reader and book is a little bit like, I want what's comfortable. I come here, like you go to a restaurant you go to all the time, you kind of want the same thing. And it's hard to do that. And I think also, there's going to be a Green Arrow book, whether somebody has a really great idea for Green Arrow or not.
Yeah.
Whereas with an indie book, that this could have just not happened. It didn't need to happen. Somebody really believed in it. And I think that's almost just a vote of confidence and enthusiasm in and of itself. And I think to hear you describe the tone you're going for and the very specific elements that you're kind of mashing together and see how they work, like that's worth doing. And I think that's just great to see. And it's a good reason for making a book on Kickstarter.
Yeah.
I hope people will check it out.
Yeah, thank you. And to all you watching now, check it out. No, but thank you. Yeah, like it's, if the big two and everything is, and like how long can you make a monthly, book series over and over and over and over again without kind of going over different storylines and X, Y, and Z? Like if monthly comics and everything else, have its place and it's great and it's awesome, but it's like what is it? It's like Boston pizza. I don't know if you have Boston pizza, but it's like Boston pizza. Have. Okay.
Been to Boston twice, and I had seafood.
Let me get an American. It's like Red Lobster.
Oh, okay, gotcha.
You're gonna have a good time. you're gonna enjoy your meal, right? But is
Wait,
it?
are you talking about a pizza chain called Boston Pizza, or just
Yeah,
like we have Chicago pizza and we have
no, no,
Detroit
no,
pizza?
no. Like, yeah, no,
Oh,
no.
okay,
The chain, yeah, Boston. But like, it's like a chain restaurant, right? It's cool, right?
gotcha.
You enjoy your time, right, for the most part. But like, you're not gonna get anything like super crazy. It's not a Michelin star.
Mhm.
I feel like indie comics have this super, super unique possibility where it's one vision. We have editors that we hire to work with us, or whatever. But we have this vision. We don't have to go back to a status quo. And there's just these storytelling elements that you can't find in corporate comic books, right? There's risks that we can take as indie, and you're starting to see it kind of adopted more like with Image,
Mhm.
even in like the Radiant Black series, right? Like they do a lot of cool stuff
Yeah.
in that series with like going back in time and kind of X, Y, and Z. But you're not going to find that everywhere, and I think indie comics more than any place else. Buy indie comics, guys. But more than any place else, though, you're gonna get those elements. You're gonna get those elements of, yeah, what if we turned the page this way and did this, and what if we our storytelling hooks were like this, and more than anything, being in this community and seeing what I've seen, you just see the love and the effort and the care that's put into indie comics, and we just need to get the fan bases and eyes on it. And I think with the downfall of Diamond and stuff like that, we're gonna start to see more of these Kickstarters and more of these comics really just rise up to the top.
Hmm. Yeah, I think the things that need to happen there are kind of happening. I don't know. I know people have different feelings about, like, say, Boom or doing Power Ranger comics on Kickstarter. I have mixed feelings myself, but I think there is the benefit of that is you've got people coming on here who maybe will just buy Power Rangers or the GI Joe collection and leave, but they might stick around and see something else. I think also the level of art and lettering on these books and design, I think just in the time that I've been here, which is about 4 years, has gotten better and better and better, to the point where it used to be kind of unusual. I'd see a book that looks as good as yours, and now I'm not going to say it's commonplace. Usually a lot better looking than average, um, but it's more normal. And I think people are seeing kind of the quality uptick as well, and saying, hey, this is a good way to get a comic too. And it's not just like some poorly drawn, writer's pitch that didn't get picked up. So yeah, I think, man, all the good stuff is in place for this to be a good time for doing what we're doing. So I think that's a great place to leave it. Like I said, everybody, Haven's got, when you're watching this, it says 4. That's an illusion. It's going to be about 2 days to go when you check this out. So click over there and back this great book to just get into the ground floor of what sounds like it's going to be an awesome universe. But let's switch gears real quick into a couple other comics I want to show off while we have some time. So the first one is Remember Part 2. It's the second issue of the series, and I brought this up first because it really something you said just a second ago, Brayden, like about the intensity and the turns and things you can do in comics on Kickstarter. I think almost there's a suspense in reading a book on Kickstarter just because it's not going to go back to the status quo, or it's not going to have a neat ending. And this book I've read because I did a cover for it, which you can get here, is a really intense book. It's a pretty dark book. It's got some kind of true detective-y elements. It's kind of a crime thriller, some revenge plot stuff. And the thing I really took away from it is that it was like super intense. It's jarring, I think, in a good way, to read a book like this where anything can happen. That you're kind of getting into something somebody wanted to tell a story on its own, and it's a lot of fun for that reason. In addition to my covers, there's some other great artwork here you can get that you should check out. So definitely head over to Kickstarter. This link will also be in the description, and back Remember Part 2. Next one I want to show off has got just a few days left. Hunters of the Outer Realm by our friend CJ Hudson. I've been saying a lot of great things about this book, and I mean it. This is just a beautiful looking sci-fi book. It's got such a unique vibe. Let me get down to the interior pages here. I love the art for this, and the world that it builds is so. I mean, I think people are going to really love this book. I love CJ's other work, and I just love this work is like nostalgic, but not quite. It's got its own vibe to it, and so I think this is a fun book to explore. Definitely looking forward to checking this out. So head over to Kickstarter and back this one. This has only got a few days left as well, but is definitely worth checking out. Next one I want to bring up is our Joey Galvez, my co-host here. We do he mostly does. I do a cover every now and then. A book called Archetypes, which is kind of Wizard Comics, but for indie comics now. And he's doing a trading card set based on some of the covers and artwork that we've done in the book. So this one has just a little bit of time to go, but I think you'll be able to do late pledges when you're watching this. This is a really fun set. Joey put a lot of thought into not just how these cards look, which is fantastic, but you have a 1 in 5 chance of getting a special metal variant. So there's just a bit of a fun game aspect to this that I think is cool. He also did a great job. Let me go down to the packaging. He did, I think every step of this did such a great job to make this a fun thing to pick up. You can get some bonus cards. There's some ones from the campaign we just talked about from Capable by Jonathan Hendrick. You have some of my artwork here that you can get cards of. This one's not mine. This one's from another Jonathan Hendrick story called Abracadabra. And this was my variant for the first issue of Archetypes. But just a lot of good stuff here. You can get some extra stuff, some shirts. You can also pick up the back issues of Archetypes magazine, which is short stories. One of mine's in there. We've got some other great creators. It's also got a lot of articles on the writing process, making your own comic and your comic on Kickstarter. So it's just a great read if you're a comic creator or if you're just a fan of indie comics. And last but not least, my book is going to be launching soon, fulfilling the intro to this book, which was called Countdown to Cobalt Crisis. Now, and once that's done, we're going to launch the first part, which is going to be the first 2 issues of the sequel to We Are Scarlet Twilight, Cobalt Crisis. This is essentially Crisis on Infinite Earths or Secret Wars if it had happened in the Golden Age of comics. So we kind of have all the atmosphere of the pulps or the Batman animated series or your old Justice Society comics mixed with the big sort of events that you see happen in Civil War or Secret Wars. Character deaths, characters from other universes coming in, status quo changes, huge armies of superheroes, all that fun stuff. But I thought done in a different way that made it worth doing. I wasn't sure I was going to do a sequel to We Are Scarlet Twilight, but I left it open in case I had a good idea. And reading Crisis one day a few years ago, I finally kind of stumbled into it. So I thought I had enough there to make it worth doing, and I think it's going to be a lot of fun. The link for this one is, like the others, in the description. So if you're watching this, click over there, get in the pre-launch. It should be within the next month or two that I get the rest of the books out of here from the previous campaign and to backers and can launch this one. So I hope you guys will check it out. But I think that does it for this week. Brayden, it was great to talk about Haven, and I'm really glad to see it doing well, and I hope everyone will check it out.
Yeah, no, thank you for having me on and giving my spiel. And yeah, absolutely. Couple days left. X-Men Mutants, Gotham City, a lot of fun times. Thank you again for having me on.
No, it was great to talk about this book. I mean, I think just that last sales pitch is exciting enough. Like, what if something like the X-Men happened in Gotham City? That's almost enough for me to be curious and want to read it, even without all the other great stuff I've heard. So everybody head over there in the 2 days you got left and check out this great book. But until next week, keep reading those comics.